So welcome everyone. I want to talk a bit about the origins of Lean Six Sigma. And really what I'd like to point out in this brief video is that really Lean Six Sigma is the culmination of many kind of complementary philosophies around how to improve your business processes from various different perspectives, but really the culmination of many philosophies coming together. So it's not really two philosophies, Lean Six Sigma. It's actually those two plus a bunch of other stuff that I'm going to walk you through, because I think it's important to understand the history of where does this all come from. And so what I'd like to say just out of the gate is there's various different disciplines in industry around how to improve your business, how to improve your process, how to improve customer experience, that sort of thing. And so you're inevitably kind of been bombarded by a lot of these different terminologies. So I'm just trying to get your head around some of these concepts. So you may have heard of things like TQM, back in the day, stands for Total Quality Management. Additionally, you may have heard of things, process engineering, or even the term transformation. A lot of those things have some roots, again, in continuous improvement. It's important to understand where these roots come from. And of course, SPC, or statistical process control, theory of constraints, right? More recently, terms like Scrum and a Kanban are kind of shown up in the IT and service sector space, but I'm going to show you how these things have a lot of roots in some of these concepts around that you find in Lean philosophy. And then finally, things like design for Six Sigma, not surprisingly, was born out of Six Sigma, but has different applications, of course. And so there's so many different terms and so many different philosophies out there, but what I want to try to do is take you through a little bit of a history around how these concepts around Lean and Six Sigma evolved over time. Many of these things are very much related because we're all about trying to improve things for the process, for our processes and for our customers. So the best way to kind of show you that is this timeline. And so this timeline is, there's really three main timelines depicted in this kind of busy image here. The first timeline is the blue one, that horizontal blue one that goes right through the middle. And that timeline is really the quote unquote lean timeline, okay? And I'm going to talk about that in detail in a second. Then you've got this red timeline that shoots off there, which is really a timeline for what we call, Six Sigma nowadays, okay? And then there's a green timeline that comes off the bottom. And again, this timeline is a bit of an offshoot that really formulates what is now known as kind of business process management or process re-engineering type of thinking. Now, the interesting thing is that you've got these three separate timelines, but what I really want you to understand is that regardless of what type of continuous improvement philosophy you're trying to roll out for your business, for your company, or that you're a part of for your company, all of these concepts have tremendous value for certain situations, okay? And so typically what we find nowadays is we have more generic terms for companies deploying philosophies to help customers, help improve their customer satisfaction. So you might hear things like process excellence or continuous improvement. And the reason they do that is because we don't want to get in this world of culture war between one philosophy versus another, because all of them have a lot of value. And all of them are really, you want to leverage in different situations. And so as such, companies in the past, if you called yourself a Six Sigma company, the lean folks would get kind of upset, say, well, why are you not doing lean, and vice versa. And you get this infighting of culture, which you don't want, right? We don't need that. The point of all of this is to make things better for your customers and for your clients, okay? And so there's been a push in the last many years, I'd say, to bring all of these together under one big umbrella. And I really think that's the best approach. Okay, so let's talk about this timeline a little bit, because it's important you understand this background as a black belt as to where this stuff comes from. So let's start with the lean timeline. So the lean timeline really is founded in, I would say, Toyota is a key content creator here. However, what I want to point out is that there's a lot of stuff even that predates Toyota that now have kind of shown up and is really part of our lean philosophy. And so a lot of these things are pre-industrial revolution and even industrial revolution time period. So you're talking about, in some cases, 1800s, 1900s is when some of these concepts came into play. So when you're talking about the Henry Ford's assembly line, which was, he was renowned for this assembly line concept, which revolutionized industrial practices back in the day in the early 1900s. Well, Toyota actually went to observe Henry Ford's assembly line and took a lot of amazing content and knowledge from there and applied it to what they called the Toyota production system that was eventually called Lean. Okay, and so Toyota has been really is one of the key founders of Lean concepts and Lean philosophy, but they also have pulled from past experiences from various different inputs, mainly Henry Ford was one of those key inputs as well. And so when you look at this Lean timeline, if you think about, you put yourself in the shoes of Toyota, post-World War II, Toyota was obviously a Japanese company, and Japan was in a real tough state of affairs after World War II. So they didn't have capital and cash flow around to just build the cars anymore. You couldn't do what you would normally do in that case, which was build 1 million cars and then wait for people to buy them, and then you just give them the car. They needed to find very, very, I'd say, what they call just-in-time solutions to manage the cash flow of their business accordingly. And as such, it was born out of necessity, this concept of just-in-time manufacturing that came out of just, because of where they were post-World War II. Okay, so a lot of the concepts that they created were because of that. And it's not surprising that when they started to perfect these concepts, they became an incredibly profitable business because they didn't have a tremendous amount of inventory. They produced things as they were needed, so they didn't generate a lot of waste. And it wasn't before long that all of a sudden Toyota became a very, very competitive car company to the Detroit City, Motor City of the world, where you'd have GM, Chrysler, Ford, and all those guys. So that's the Lean time period. And in and along the same time period, in and along attached to the same timeline, you have this red one that comes up the top, and that is really your traditional Six Sigma timeline. But again, Six Sigma wasn't even called Six Sigma pre, I guess, 80s, if you will, right? And so there's a lot of key people that are related to Six Sigma that were known as the founders. Some of these people like Juran and Edwards Deming, these guys were the founders, if you will, of what we call Six Sigma today. But the funny thing is Deming has a lot of overlap with Japan and Toyota as well, okay? And so, but if you look at a lot of the tools and concepts that are built into Six Sigma, there are a lot of statistical reliance, right? So control charts, statistical methods, even the scientific method, all of these things are early 1900s stuff, right? That was then eventually born into, Deming would take that work and say, man, we need a methodology to solve problems. And he basically created the PDCA, which is Plan, Do, Check, Act philosophy to solve problems. And he was known as a guru in this space of quality. And then that eventually became taken by Motorola and a company called Allied Signal to create what we call the first generation of Six Sigma. They coined this term Six Sigma that was then eventually made famous by General Electric. And if you remember, Jack Welch back in those days, the CEO of General Electric, was really taking these concepts of Six Sigma and making tremendous popularity with the success they had with it, that then all of a sudden, every Fortune 500 company in the world wanted to deploy Six Sigma of some kind, okay? And it wasn't until probably, I don't know, maybe the late 80s, early 90s, where Six Sigma started to collide a little bit with the Lean concepts that you found from Toyota. And some consultants worked and put their heads together and worked together to create a new philosophy that was very much, complementary to both, called it Lean Six Sigma. And they took the best of both worlds. They took the methodology of DMAIC from Six Sigma, and they took the concept of PDCA as well, and that stayed, and then a whole bunch of other Lean concepts made it into there. And so the main focus there is that they wanted to create this world where Lean and Six Sigma was not combating each other, but they were actually, complementary in nature. So that's how that worked out. Now, the final part of this timeline is the green, I'd say, process re-engineering, industrial engineering timeline that really became what is now the business process management world and school of thought. But a lot of the business process management school of thought, that if you hear that term and companies are saying, hey, we're doing BPM or business process management, right? A lot of that is rooted in industrial engineering concepts around time studies, around mapping out your processes in great amount of detail, re-engineering processes, redesigning, and what they found was is that these concepts and philosophies were really applicable in high service industries, so telecom, banking, financial services, healthcare. A lot of those companies used a lot of the BPM type of philosophies to great advantage. Now, again, just like Lean and Six Sigma had this little battle, we don't want to have that battle with BPM as well. And so that's why nowadays you have companies that are deploying process excellence, and they're pulling in the best of all of these concepts and philosophies, because really they all have tremendous value that they can offer the companies and of course the customers that they serve. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an overview of the history, which is lengthy in this space. So I just wanted to say thanks for your time in this quick video, and I hope you had a good understanding of the background and history of some of these, Lean Six Sigma and continuous improvement concepts and philosophies.